Here's the thing, Bruce. I'm great at controlling my anger.
This is HBR News number 381. Movember is here, and NoNut November is basically fascism, where we talk about the news of the week and give it the Badger treatment. Hello, everybody, and welcome to Honey Badger Radio. I hope you guys are doing well this week and that you're laughing at all of this absurdity so that you are not consumed by it. I am one of your lovely hosts, Brian Martinez, and I'm joined by my much lovelier, better looking, and definitely more intelligent co-hosts, Hannah, Dr. Ranimer Cam, and Mike J.
Leave me out of this. I won't claim to be neither one of those things.
I identify as evil and ugly and nasty. I'll have you know.
Oh, I should have asked about
There
that
we go.
before.
Nah, you're all good.
Just presumed your status. So anyway, yeah. So we have a number of fun stories to talk about on today's show. So please be sure to continue the conversations both in the chat as well as the comment section. I'm just going to get this out of the way right now. I understand that today is election day, and I understand that there probably isn't as much activity here because everyone is thinking about that. And
they're all jumping the gun somewhat because you're not going to get the results until December.
Yeah, we're not going to know the truth for months. I thought you guys knew that.
Until the Democrats have exactly one vote more than the Republicans, then it's called. Instantly called. Don't talk about it. Shut up. Don't question anything. It's over.
That's how they get
Are you
everything
election
done.
denier? You election denier. Shut up.
That's how they get everything done.
Precisely. So, okay. So anyway, if you if you want to share your thoughts on that, go ahead in the comments. But I appreciate that you guys are here. We are going to try and only talk about stuff that is sort of men's, rights oriented, dealing with things like false allegations, child custody, female evil, which we often ignore. And, yeah, so what we're hoping to do is bring you something that no one else is doing, especially today. So, with that said, to summarize what today's show is, we're going to be talking about Movember a little bit. I want to say a few words about Movember and NoNut November because I don't want people to forget that that's what we're doing right now. At least some people on the internet are doing it. Next, we also have some follow-up news regarding a monstrous torturing and killing of a 15-year-old boy at the hands of his caregivers. A woman that lied to her husband, lied that her husband had raped her because she felt that he wasn't doing enough around the house. I know, and more. So stick around. It's going to be a good time. And be sure to join us.
It's going to be
I'm
a
not
serious.
sure about that.
Yeah,
they're not
It's
the
like
most.
when you said we're gonna have fun at the beginning of the show. I'm like, I don't know about that, Brian.
Yeah, I can't promise it'll be fun, but I can say that it will. There will be reactions and words spoken, and some of them might be mean and directed at people who deserve much worse. But anyway, so. There is that, and as well, we have a patron-only show, which I think this is really interesting, and this kind of falls in line with my other thing I wanted to talk a little bit about. So, oops, sorry about that. So we have this article from 1828.org.uk, and it is entitled International Men's Day, which is next. Not this coming Saturday, but the following Saturday, if I remember correctly, is International Men's Day. And they're saying it's a feminist cause. International Men's Day is a feminist cause. And this is the our today's patron show article that we're going to be looking at. And the thing that it jumped out at me because I think that the constant bashing, I mean, we're going to still see that. Like the UN is not going to, acknowledge International Men's Day. There's not going to be a Google Doodle for it. None of that is going to happen, right? The UN is going to make
until the feminist movement actually succeeds in co-opting it, and then
Yes.
there'll be a anti-toxic masculinity Google Doodle.
Yeah,
it's going to be Trans Men Day. They'll
Right.
do that.
Yeah, they'll do that. But I mean, they've been trying for 4 or 5 years, maybe more, to co-opt International Men's Day as a day to basically falsely frame the pressures that women and girls put on men and boys, and the lack of compassion that women and girls have for men and boys as an aspect or a set of aspects of masculinity that are toxic and caused by, taught to them by men and caused by male mentorship and male authority and need to be eliminated, and boys just need to be feminized to rescue them for that. That's where that's going to go. And we're going to have to fight it tooth and nail until the day that people stop buying into gynocentric ideas and feminism loses power entirely.
Well, yes. So I believe that this is a reaction maybe to the fact that the International Men's Day is just not I don't they're negative propaganda around it, right? Where they're like, why do men need a day, right? I don't think it's working. I think that people are ready to celebrate International Men's Day, Movember, and even NoFap November or NoNut November. And I think what I'm seeing at least is that most of this support for this stuff is coming from men. So they are like, men are doing this and they're supporting other men in this as well. And I think that feminists are losing the propaganda battle against it. Now, just like I said before, I'm not expecting any major changes. I'm not expecting the UN to acknowledge this, but I think the feminists are trying to kind of like rally, or at least, start to make the claim, hey, we were always supportive of this, right? Not just International Men's Day, but also the Movember, which is another big one, right? And they use Movember. I've already seen articles anyway where feminists try to use Movember as like a mental health thing, and then of course, because they turn it into a mental health thing, that means it becomes a toxic masculinity thing. And
well, to be honest, it wouldn't be bad to use it as a mental health thing if it wasn't for the fact that mental health has again been dominated by this false framing of women's lack of compassion and the pressures that women put on men and boys as an aspect of masculinity that needs to be changed by denying men the right to choose how they're going to be masculine.
Yeah, and it's all about servicing women, which we're supposed to presume is the definitive way to be masculine, because ultimately, women and feminists are going to ask men to serve women, and they're going to try to convince men that doing that is essentially, good for your mental health as a man, because you are somehow doing yourself a favor, and doing your masculinity a favor. But the truth is that masculinity doesn't need to be obviously in service to women. So, but that's what I think they're trying to do, and I think that they're gonna try and make it sound like they were always supportive. But we were there. We were there back when, it was how do I put this? Back when it was not cool to be a man, and they still must on some level believe that. So, well, anyway, So I don't know if you guys have any thoughts on Movember and because I do think that, like International Men's Day, I think that they're gonna try to co-opt it. Like I said, they've done this before, and when it comes to NoNut November, which this you may not have an opinion on, it's another thing that I've noticed is that every year when NoNut November comes around, there are people trying to call it fascist or misogynist or something, and they're trying to get men to continue to watch pornography or whatever. When I think the whole thing about NoNut November is that it was a dare. Like, okay, guys, let's see if you have the discipline to not do this. And it's not really no fap. It's not like don't jerk off. It's really like don't have orgasms.
Really?
Yeah. So like if you're
I thought there was an exception made for if you need to please a woman, then you absolutely must please that woman, surely.
No, I didn't see that. I mean, there might be another version of it where it's just about like self satisfaction, but what I noticed is there is stories of guys who have literally like did not bang their girlfriends for a month or their wives.
That's mental. That's mental by anyone's standards, surely.
Yeah.
But if women were doing this and men started acting like it was an attack on them, you can guarantee that this would become rape culture really fast. Oh, how dare you say that it's fascist to stop having sex with your boyfriend for a month? That's rape culture. She has the right to say no anytime she wants. So honestly, like I don't think it's necessary to do something like this for your health in terms of physical health. Like people talk about losing your semen is losing your essence and all that stuff. I don't believe in all that, because I think it's kind of dumb to say that you should not use one of your bodily functions for a period of time in order to improve your health. It seems hinky, if you ask me.
I don't know.
But guys do have as much right as women to say, I'm not going to do this for a while, and of course you can always do something too much as well. And that's dangerous. But on a dare, it's not going to hurt you. And it's people make a bigger deal out of it than they really need to, I think.
A lot of this does seem to necessarily revolve around pornography, because masturbation is not a political issue. Like,
it shouldn't be.
The masturbation predates politics at any level by like hundreds of thousands of years. God and/or evolution seems to have designed us with opposable thumbs and hands that happen to rest at exactly where the genitalia rest. This is not a political thing, but how we approach the existence of pornography does seem to at least peripherally be a political thing. And the problem with pornography is it facilitates fapping on demand. Like, even if you don't feel like having a wank, you can still have one anyway, just to pass the time. Just pull up some porn and indulge yourself. And maybe that is perhaps excessive. Like, eating when you're hungry makes perfect sense, but eating just because you're bored and it's the easiest thing to do, that's when you might ask yourself if you have a problem. A problem that might result in you getting fat or whatever. A good rule of thumb is when you gotta go, you gotta go. If you find yourself in a situation wherein you can wank without the aid of porn, using only your own horny imagination, that's the right time to do it. If you wake up with a raging boner that won't let you sleep, maybe sort yourself out. Actually, in general, it is a good way to help you sleep.
Oh, yeah.
In the event that you need an early night, or you're just trying to treat your ongoing insomnia, sure, smoke some weed and have a wank. It's more safe and effective than any sleeping pill on the market. But if you're only doing it because you're bored and lazy, maybe you should instead take the opportunity to do something productive. Same goes with smoking weed or eating food. You don't need to go to these extremes of not jerking off for a month even in the event that you really, really want to. Going cold turkey is always difficult with any drug or any chemical or biological process,
Behavior,
especially if you're addicted to it.
Mhm.
I say this as someone who has quit more drugs than most people will ever take. The best way to get off it is to gradually wean yourself off it. Go from once a day to once every other day to twice a week to once a week to twice a month to once a month. And by that point, you'll find you can take it or leave it. If it's something you really want to do, you can't just flat out stop doing it, not without some serious distress.
Mhm.
You have to slow yourself down at your own pace to the stage where you don't want to do it, at least not just for its own sake. It doesn't have to be NoNut November. It can be less nut November. That way you can actually extend it into less nut December, rather than just ritually not nutting for a month and then waking up on December the 1st and going right back to wanking like a caged monkey for the rest of the year.
Mhm.
If this is about your health, physically, mentally, or spiritually, then it's not something you can isolate to 1 month of the year. Certainly not for the sake of just going along with a fad. Your health is for life, not just for November. There you go. That's your quote. That's your takeaway. That's your homework. Go forth and do as you will.
So the origin story I heard for NoNut November, because of course, as most things that catch on, it started deep within the bowels of the 4th Chan. And the whole idea was, hey, this one guy was just like, hey, I heard that like if you stop masturbating, you'll start becoming more outgoing, and you'll just naturally attract women because, well, now your biology notices you've got a problem that you're not solving, and is going to seek other ways to solve that problem.
Mm. Yeah, I don't think it works that way, but
of course not.
But
like,
I think the temptation,
that was the impetus. That was the idea.
Yeah.
Well, it's certainly an interesting experiment, if nothing else.
Well, what I was going to say
does this work or does this not work?
I think the temptation, like if you're a guy and let's say you're single, and you'd like to change your situation, like to date women or whatever. So it's not someone who's simply choosing to be alone, right? If it's a lot harder to get off your ass, go out in the world and meet someone and then like see where it goes. But it's really easy to stay in and wank. So maybe that's where that's the logic behind it. I'm not saying it's right or wrong, but that might be what that guy was thinking. Like if you are limiting your access to easy gratification, that you're going to like want to, make a change so that you can delay that gratification, but potentially get something better. Like, meeting someone, for example, that wants sex as bad as you do. Who knows? Or just a nice person that you want to know better or whatever. So that might be what their theory is. That's my guess. So, but anyway, I just wanted to bring this up because it is NoNut November. Also, it's Movember, which I think that feminists have taken a big interest in, and it's also going to be International Men's Day, and that's like next weekend. And we'll follow up. We'll see what stuff is going on. But like, look out for the guys in your circle. See how they're doing. Check in on them. See if they need like a mental health check-in or something. I'm not saying that like, November is it is kind of a sad month, isn't it? Now that I think about it. But yeah, just check in on your friends, see how they're doing. And I'm sure that they'll really appreciate it, especially if you haven't spoken to them in a while. So, all right, so let's get into today's horrific stories. We're going to start with this one, which I'm pretty sure we covered when it initially happened, because this sounds really familiar to me, but it's been like a couple years. So, Mike J, you could?
Yeah, so this is probably the darkest story we got on tap, and that's saying something for today. So
Yeah.
if you're having an unusually good day, you can step away from the computer for 20 minutes or so and come back. This is rough. So the murder trial of Sebastian Kalinowski has ended, and his parents have been sentenced. These are two incredibly Polish-sounding names, so I'm gonna make one go at them, and then I'm gonna refer to them as something else. So,
Okay.
Agnieszki Kalinowski
Yeah.
and Andrzej Lataszewski, who will from this point on be known as Agony and Andrea. I think that would be more simple.
Yeah, probably.
So the two, this young boy's parents, tortured Sebastian for months before his death last August. Andre, a bodybuilder and abuser of steroids, would mercilessly beat the boy to the point of breaking bones. Sebastian was also regularly beaten with wooden clubs and extension cords. The medical examination of his body would show signs of extensive abuse, including blood clots in the liver, over 25 rib fractures,
Ugh.
damage to the muscles in the heart, and large, deep, down to the fat scabs on his back area. While Andre would beat the boy, Agni, who was present for nearly all of the beatings, would have no reaction, often going about her day as normal. We know of all this because all this evidence comes from CCTV footage from cameras that Agni and Andre set all around the house to watch Sebastian while they were away. The day Sebastian died from a combination of an infection from broken ribs and sepsis, Andre attempted to destroy the hard drives containing the evidence, but investigators were able to recover over 4,000 hours of video detailing the horrible abuse. Both parents were eventually found guilty and sentenced to life with a minimum of 39 years in prison.
I dread to think how this story will be spun by various news outlets. I mean, you're unlikely to read these kinds of stories in the legacy media. But if you do, you can bet the farm the spin will be, look at what men do. We need to crack down on those bastards even more than we already are cracking down. It reminds me of when Cassie J went on Australian daytime TV and she was presented with a similar story of a young boy getting domestically abused by a man while a woman looked on and did nothing. And Cassie responded along the lines of, so doesn't this show that males can be domestic abuse victims too? And everyone on that news show fell into this pregnant pause, befuddled and gobsmacked at the idea that there is any message to be sent other than men bad. But she had a point. Does this happen to girls at the same scale that it happens to boys? I somehow doubt it. In a world where everyone understands the somewhat asymmetrical rule that you must not hit girls, you can't help but notice that there's no mention of you must not hit boys. It's a rule that's meant to be reserved for children, but what people learn as children tends to get embedded in their conscience for the rest of their lives. And very often they neglect to differentiate between men and boys. And so they smack the shit out of boys. And no, I'm not saying you should extend this violence to girls. I'm saying you should take the compassion you have for girls and expand that to boys as well. Where do you think this guy got the idea that it's okay to beat a boy to death? Is it at all possible that it's because he was beaten when he was a boy? I mean, maybe not. Maybe he was just a very spoiled child who never learned to ask himself, how would you like it? That's also a thing. It's probably how so many women grow up to think it's okay to be violent to anyone and everyone. But for men, it's much more common to have received violence that they then subconsciously use as justification for exacting similar violence on someone else. And if all anyone can do in the event of a male passing violent hate onto another male is conclude that even more violent hate should be thrown in the direction of all things male, then the cycle will only continue. I mean, clearly this man is a scumbag and should most definitely rot in prison forever, regardless of how he became such a scumbag. But the solution to this, as a wider problem, is not to blame all men, let alone all boys. If we as a civilization showed some compassion to the men and boys who have not done this, then maybe they won't do it. And in the meantime, maybe it would help if we taught women and girls it's not okay to hit boys. It's not okay for anyone to hit boys or men any more than it's okay to hit anyone else. I think that might help. I'm sure a lot of women get off on the idea of men fighting other men, especially over women. But when men are beating boys to death and you still do nothing, I think you might have been corrupted long beyond anything evolutionarily normal. Misandry is not just the hatred of men. At its worst excesses, it's the hatred of boys as well. And there is no conceivable excuse for that. Maybe a man raped you. Maybe men created patriarchy somewhere in the history of the world, but boys did not. Maybe you hate dogs because a dog attacked you once, but if you use that as an excuse to kick newborn puppies to death, that is 100% a you problem. At that point, it's not just irrational fear, it is irrational hatred. Irrational hatred of the innocent. Maybe it was simply cycled into you, as these things often are, but it's your ethical duty to at least try to pass on a smaller punch than you received. If you pass on a bigger punch, even if it's vicariously through a third party, then you get more blame than sympathy. And you also belong in prison forever. Them's the breaks. We have to draw the line somewhere. Maybe if we set the bar somewhere when it comes to women, we wouldn't have to set it quite so impossibly high when it comes to men.
So the first thing I have with regard to this case, and I'm going to start out by saying that no, we don't know the entire history of this family and everything. So I'm not making a specific statement about what befell this couple before their divorce. But the one thing that is obvious is the boy wasn't living with his biological father, right? And the biological mother was no longer with the biological father. She was in a whole different country with their son. And that is something that you have to wonder about. What was the reasoning behind the custody arrangement?
Yeah.
Did they agree on this custody arrangement, or did she have to file for it? Or did their home country automatically award her custody because she's the mother and he was just shit out of luck because he was the father? Like, those are three possibilities. And why did she leave the father, whose statements are gut-wrenching? Like, if you go and you look up what the father had to say to this couple, you can feel the pain coming off of those words. It's just, and I understand. I would want to kill somebody if they killed my kid. You know, I cannot imagine what that must be like. And so you look at the man that she got together with, right, versus a man who loved his son that much that he suffers so much from his death.
Yeah.
And you have to wonder, is this the woman who, one of those women who left the stable and therefore to her boring guy for the less stable and therefore to her more interesting and exciting guy, like the guy with roid rage? And if that's the case, and she put her son in that environment, like that's not just bad judgment. That's a complete and utter lack of concern for her child. Like, she wasn't thinking about her son when she brought him to live with her. She was thinking about her. She was thinking about how she would feel and how she would look. She wasn't thinking about his welfare, right? She was thinking about him as an accessory. And the other thing is, there's a lot of guys out there that will rescue the woman from the bad boy boyfriend and be the stable guy that's the next guy in a relationship. And think that they're going to get permanency from that, and everything's going to be, picket fences and riding off into the sunset and all that shit. And I could tell you from personal experience that is bullshit. Just absolute bullshit. Like, even if she doesn't go into looking for bad boys again after that, she's not going to stay with you. You have a few months at best, and then she's moving on. And she'll rip your heart out, throw it out on the ground, and stomp on it on her way out. She won't even realize she's doing it, right? She might even ask you to photograph her wedding to one of your buddies. But in any case, it's a bad idea. Don't be the hero. Don't be the guy that dates the gal that had to break up with this guy or that guy because he was an asshole, right? Say, oh man, that really sucks. Maybe you should take some time to recover and work on yourself so that you don't get yourself into that situation again. You can be a listening ear. You can be a advisor. Don't expect her to take your advice either, though. But don't be the next guy, because the guy after you might be this guy, and he might kill your son.
Yes. And, we don't know why that happened. But it's just, I remember this story. We did cover it a couple of years ago, and I kind of forgot about it. It's amazing that it took so long for
this happened in 21, so this couldn't have been years ago.
Well, I'm like a year. Yeah, it was like last year, I guess. It always
August
feels
2021, yeah.
Yeah, it always feels like it's older. But because we cover like stories like this, and I don't know, sometimes I feel like I've been doing this forever. So but anyway, yeah, it's just really, really tragic, and I'm glad that there's going to be some justice. I'm glad that they are both looking at the same punishment, which is kind of weird. That doesn't normally happen, where women are who are criminal are treated to the same level of punishment as men. So that's actually pretty I guess encouraging. I don't know if that's really like a good way to put it, but I'm glad that
I guess it tells you this is how bad it has to get. Like,
yeah, it might be
the
that
cops
too.
that watched this footage said this was footage they would never forget. And
Yeah,
like, these are people who see murder victims that have been, stabbed to death. They see murder victims that have been beaten to death. They see people that have been beheaded, and they said they would never forget this again. That tells you something. It has to be that bad before a woman gets treated equally in criminal court.
Yeah, for sure. So anyway, yeah, this is rough, but again, good news, they're going to jail, and we're probably not going to see them again. So thanks for Thanks for the memories. Let us know what you guys think about this story in the comments. And we're going to move on to the next one. Oh, and before we do that, I forgot to mention this. We have some super chows from last week. Hannah, did you read all of yours for the...
You know what? I'm
HBR
guilty.
talk?
I think I did, but I didn't put done.
Oh, okay. So you did, but you didn't put done. All right.
Yeah,
Well,
that's probably the least of the technical difficulties from last week. Like I got back on the horse, but I didn't bother with the saddle or anything.
Oh no,
Like,
it's fair enough. But you did read them.
I did
right?
read them.
Okay. All right. So I get it. It's a lot of steps. So an anonymous user gave us a $5 super chow and didn't say anything. So thank you to whoever you are, anonymous user. This was yesterday at 4 a.m. So nobody was around, and you put it through. And I guess I'm just gonna say thanks. And then Meredith G today at 6:16 gave us $5 and says, HBR News 381, thanks for the counter programming for those of us who want to escape from the never-ending U.S. vote count and speculation. Yeah, I mean, like I said, I thought about, well, I thought, would it be fun for us to do an election stream? But I don't think so. And I had stories already in mind, so I'll probably, have something running in the background after my show is over. And that way I can, because I am curious, obviously, but I don't want to make the show into something, I guess, that's, too political.
And what can we even do in the space of an hour and a half? Like 2 states may be called in that time, and only preeminently.
Well, that's
even none of that is finished.
Well,
given the situation,
I think that what a lot of people are doing is they're basically like they're to my knowledge they're just staying online until it's over, and that's it. Like, and that's probably again gonna be late at night. I'm not that committed. I mean, whatever's gonna happen, right? I'm not worried about Virginia. I think it's gonna be fine here, but yeah, I mean, like, I just don't want to get, I don't know, sucked into all of that, and I don't have people like Viva Fry or Max, what's his name? Not Max, Matt Christensen, who can like add useful commentary. So yeah, we're just gonna let it go and gonna keep on trucking. So let us know what you guys think about this story in the comments. I got your super chats and super chows. Moving on to the next story, which is also kind of annoying, but so just 5 days before today's election, so this was like last week, Maine District Attorney Matthew Foster was smeared with old sexual assault allegations. So this is sort of like a Me Too / false allegation story, okay? The Bangor Daily News covered the allegation in which Kathleen Heinerman, who briefly lived with Foster as a child, reported to the Maine State Police that Foster had touched her in an inappropriate sexual manner on multiple occasions when she was 13. Years ago, when the allegation originally came out, Foster fully cooperated and submitted 2 lie detector tests that were given by separate examiners. The complaint filed in 2017 was investigated, but the subsequent lie detector tests show that he never sexually touched the accuser.
Lie detector tests are absolute bullshit, by the way. It's long been confirmed that they mean nothing. They're easy to overcome. It all works on the certain spasms of certain muscles. If anything, I mean, if they do show that you were lying, it means nothing. But if they show that you weren't lying, it still means nothing, but slightly less nothing. If you see what I mean, it shouldn't be held to any legal precedent, and it isn't. So I don't know why it even comes up.
Yeah, it does. I was gonna say it's supposed to be, I guess, in defense of this guy, but the truth is he doesn't need to do that because there's just no evidence, right? So. But yeah,
lie detector tests usually get used as a one more thing. You know,
yeah.
They have this evidence, and one more thing. They passed a lie detector test, so obviously this person is, you know, that's I don't usually see it being the sole piece of evidence on which something is based.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it doesn't. It's not usually done that way, but all right. But anyway. The complaint filed in 2017 was investigated, but the subsequent lie detector tests show that he never sexually touched the accuser. In response, the allegations being dragged out again, he made a statement this Saturday. Quote, "I stand by everything I said in those examinations, and which I have said from day one. I never engaged in any of this conduct," Foster said. "I am outraged that these false statements are being made about me. I will not stand for it a moment longer." In the opinion of Vladik Filler, Foster was and is up against a corrupt system. The feminist activists for police, or the police, the advocates, the investigators, and even defense attorneys have not appreciated Matt Foster cutting back frivolous prosecutions which deprived many people of their very lucrative income streams. He continues, quote, "What Matt Foster did was clean up that district attorney's office for the first time in its entire history. He also curbed the abuse of prosecutorial discretion and weighed the actual evidence and justice in cases rather than just trump up and fabricate charges to prosecute people." Foster publicly reaffirmed that his job as prosecutor was to seek justice and not merely a conviction. He has declined to prosecute many cases for lack of evidence. For that, Matt Foster has been despised by the establishment and by special interest groups who all who feed off prosecutorial corruption and people's suffering, end quote. That's Vladik Filler.
I find myself conflicted and torn once again, like I was with Kevin Spacey the other week. Men often find themselves falsely accused of sexual misconduct, especially at times of convenient political expedience. But at the same time, district attorneys are pretty much always, actually scrap them pretty much. They are always professional liars and malicious liars. That defense attorneys are sometimes decent, honest people who are looking out for the little guy, but district attorneys are strictly in the business of prosecution. They only exist to vengefully throw the book at anyone within throwing distance of the book. I'm unwilling to believe anything they say, and I'm uninclined to show them any sympathy, even in the light of their innocence, in the same way they never consider the outside possibility of anyone else's innocence. But I suppose it is possible that 1 in every 100 DAs is indeed a person of integrity who just happened to fall into that role. And I guess it would make sense that the few who actually stand for justice would be the ones targeted by the smear merchant machine, acting as they do as a thorn in its side. That would seem to be the case according to this report. But like I said, I don't know why I would believe this report or not believe it. I don't know why I talk. I don't know why anyone listens when I talk. I know lawyers aren't as bad as, for instance, the press, despite the nefarious reputation lawyers have and the nerfed reputation that the press has. But it's still really difficult to get a handle on who is telling the truth or where the one speck of truth might be in the ocean of lies. Sometimes all you can do is report the controversy, folks, and let the audience come to their own indecision. There will be no black pills or white pills in this story, just hypercolor pills that change color depending on on the temperature. Remember those hypercolor T-shirts that change color when you breathe on them?
Yeah.
The 90s. It was a simpler time, but it contained some phenomena
Those got
analogous.
fucked when you wash them.
Yeah,
You know-
analogous to the blind uncertainty of the 2020s. We have nothing to learn from history other than how fucked up the future is. Pardon me while I retreat to my hermit shell.
The thing to remember, the thing to keep in mind is anytime there is an allegation against a person, that person deserves due process. If the allegation isn't proved, they're not guilty. Like, at least in terms of how they should be treated, how the public should treat them, how the court should treat them, and so on. So it's not a matter of do you believe one side or the other. It's, did the accuser prove their case? No? Then there's no one to believe, right?
Right.
Because the accuser didn't prove their case. The other side doesn't have to prove their case. A man should not have to prove himself innocent when someone accuses him like this. A woman shouldn't have to prove herself innocent when someone accuses her like this. This is how due process works, right? We act on proved allegations, and we shouldn't act on unproven allegations, even if we don't fully trust the individual. And just knowing the history from Bangor and why Vladik Filler commented on this story, prior to this prosecutor, there was another prosecutor who was just unbelievably corrupt. Vladik Filler was a falsely accused man. His wife accused him of rape to use the allegation in a custody battle. And the previous prosecutor, she coached the wife in how to further this allegation. She engaged in significant misconduct, and she was censured by the state. And it's very possible that this guy ran for office because of his predecessor's corruption. So, like, that doesn't necessarily say, oh, we absolutely have to trust that this lawyer is totally honest and upstanding and everything. But I suspect that may be closer to the truth than we can't trust either of the people in this story because, ad hum. And it is kind of a, well, this guy's a lawyer, he must be a liar. Like, you don't want to think that necessarily. There are good lawyers in the world. I had one when I faced my very minor false allegation, and he was great. So it is very possible that this guy really is an upstanding person who wanted to get involved in politics because of somebody before him that was horrible, and she was absolutely horrible. And if you want to know more about the history there, that Vladik Filler's history there, go to avoiceformen.com and do a search on that site for Vladik Filler. I believe her name was Kellett, Mary Kellett, and his false allegation story is all on A Voice for Men, and it is atrocious. It is, in many ways, it is every bit as bad as the one that got me involved in men's rights online and everything, and not just in my personal life with people that I knew. So that said, in this situation, you probably won't see any of the recourse that Mr. Filler had. Like, this guy's allegations just gonna stay out there in the wind, flapping in the wind, with people looking at it, going, I don't know, and that's to his detriment, regardless of whether he's guilty or innocent, because there will always be people that'll say, well, there's smoke, there must be fire. And there will also always be people that'll say, well, he's a man, he must have done something. And she's a woman, she wouldn't lie about this. All the things that people say, right? That are absolute bullshit arguments, but do cause false allegations to stick to men. And it's one of the reasons why, when it is proved that the allegation was a lie, or the evidence behind an allegation was falsified, and the woman knew that, like, she knew she was lying, or she knew, and I'm sure this is the way it's done with any other type of criminal allegation. Like if you try to commit insurance fraud and you accuse your neighbor of stealing something they didn't take, you know, and a man or a woman makes up a story and goes to court. Like there's perjury laws, there's laws against filing a false complaint with the police. I believe in the UK it's called wasting police time, and something about misleading the court, or something along those lines, abusing the trust of the court or something. But it's the same principle, and people who do that need to be held accountable. If you go to the police and you file a complaint and the complaint is a lie, or your evidence for the complaint is a lie, then that needs to be dealt with as its own crime. And the same thing, if you go into court and you present false evidence, or you lie to the court to gain a criminal conviction of somebody, that should be treated as an affront, and that should be as a crime, and should result in a trial and a conviction as well. And there should be there should be penalty for that, and it should be very serious, because our court can do very serious damage in a person's life. You can jail somebody for years on a false allegation. You can destroy somebody's ability to earn a living. You can break family ties. You can destroy their social circle, their social life. You can make somebody suicidal. So it's not like, you know, an accident where you did something minor and somebody got a bruise, or somebody lost some minor property. You know, you didn't run over somebody's fence. You didn't even kill their cat, right? You actually destroyed their life, and that is very important. This situation probably won't result in any recourse at all for Mr. Foster, but it should.
Yeah, well, you know, again, I think the reason why I'm siding with Mr. Foster in this case is because these allegations were made years ago, and it didn't stick then, and for whatever reason, you know, and so they're bringing this woman. She's basically just bringing up or digging up this old allegation to make it again, because there's an election, and she's just looking to smear. So
Yeah.
I think that it's, you know, just a kind of a pathetic attempt to destroy a man's reputation. I don't think this is going to result in, I don't know, maybe he will, you know, take legal action, but like not now, because he's kind of in the middle of all this, right? This election thing. So that might be what it is, but I don't know. My guess is that it's just reputation destruction. It's been going on, you know, surrounding this election for a while for various candidates. Of course, these rape allegations are really effective against men. And as well as, it's not just rape, she's accusing him of pedophilia. So, you know, child molestation and rape. So it's kind of crazy, but this is the kind of shit that men have to deal with. This is the shit that, you know, Brett Kavanaugh had to deal with. This is the shit that Clarence Thomas had to deal with. It's a common tactic. So,
You know, and honestly, it should never work, ever in an election. You should never base your vote on an allegation that didn't result in a criminal conviction, because you never can be sure that it wasn't just, you know, made to affect the election. You can never be sure that it wasn't completely false,
of course,
or at least misrepresented.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. All right. So I'm going to move on to the next story. Let us know what you guys think about this one in the comment section. And now we're going to move on to the last story. So I'm kind of this one. So I was going to pick something else, but turned out that it was much older than I thought. And then so Lindsay found this story for me. And it's just kind of wild. So we're going to look at this. Sharon Taylor, the woman pictured here, 61, vowed to destroy her husband after the collapse of their 21-year-old marriage. After the UK woman admitted to having an affair, so she was fucking around on him, her husband moved out of their home in Malvern, Worcestershire. Taylor then bombarded her estranged husband with abusive, nonstop messages demanding he continue to carry out household chores and asking him for money. Between March and April this year, she sent him 216 messages, including one branding him a robotic Nazi. Whatever.
I'm going to have to write that one down. That's good.
Robot Nazis.
Apparently,
Nazi zombies are out. Robot Nazis are in.
That does sound like Alex.
Yeah. Taylor, who is a former independent elected to Malvern Town, then went to the post office where her husband worked and lied to his boss, claiming that he raped her over a number of years. Oh, okay. So this woman, she went to where her husband works and then lied to her husband's boss about like being raped. After the manager told her to report this to police, Taylor replied she wouldn't, as quote, it would hurt my political career, end quote. Not like you're
Daisy.
not the shit that you're doing right now, running around making allegations. No, that's not going to harm you at all. Prosecutor Michael Aspinall said, quote, the next day she messaged the manager saying she wanted to retract what she had said and their separation affected her mental health. Sounds like she doesn't want to do any housework. He added that the victim worried if he had been arrested for the fake claim, he would have been vilified and would have lost his job.
I'll bet she was worried, considering how many times she asked him for money.
Mm-hmm. Richard,
women are really good at shooting themselves in the foot. Just got to say that.
Richard Hull.
When they're in the public eye, they are. When they're not.
Oh no, we do it. We do it without when we're not in public too. I've been very fortunate. Most of my foot shooting has been done out of the public eye, and all of it has not been in regard to anything like this. It's all just been. It's involved mainly me against me.
Mm-hmm.
But this is a very female characteristic, just shooting oneself in the foot and then being victim of it. And yeah, I'm not surprised that she did this.
We'll get into that.
So anyway, Richard Hull, defending, said that she had been going through a mental breakdown and struggled to accept the marriage was over. Mr. Hull said, quote, it was her last roll of the dice. It wasn't for financial reward. She turned to more desperate measures. She is deeply remorseful for what happened, end quote. The judge hearing the case, Judge Martin Jackson, said, quote, false allegations of rape are extremely unsettling. Threatening to make an allegation that is untrue is a very serious matter, end quote. Taylor was found guilty of stalking and blackmail charges when she appeared at Worcester Crown Court in October. She was sentenced to a total of 2 years and 3 months, suspended for 2 years. She was also ordered to complete 30 days of rehab and given a restraining order to protect her husband.
30 days is not going to be enough to rehabilitate this woman.
2 years suspended is probably not enough either. But I'm not sure what's worse. Making a false rape allegation for financial reward or making a false rape allegation because you just felt like it or because you just couldn't help yourself. Apparently it's like a sneeze. He's an asshole. He left me. He wouldn't do the dishes or scrape the snow off my windshield. And he raped me. I'm terribly sorry. Do you have a tissue? I suppose in a legal sense that would be a second degree rape accusation, a crime of passion, if you will, whereas doing it for financial reward would be first degree. But honestly, it's almost easier to comprehend the mindset of the kind of sociopath who would do all of this on purpose in a self-serving way than it is to understand the mentality of someone who just blurts out a rape accusation like it's a swear word used in the heat of the moment. I mean, in a way, it's worse, isn't it? Largely because I think that might account for the majority of false rape accusations.
Well, just imagine responding to a rape allegation with, "But Your Honor, I'm a sex addict."
Well, yeah. Well, calculated psychopaths and sociopaths still only account for something like 1 to 4% of the population. But I would think it's more common, alarmingly more common, for otherwise ordinary women to just go, "He raped me," just out of sheer frustration. And then once it leaves their mouths, they just have to commit to it. Or
It's a unique form of Tourette's.
Commit to it, or in this case, walk it back because they think they can't get away with it. But because they think they can get away with it. But if they think they can't get away with it, they do that thing that so many people do. Well, I've said it now, so it must be true, because I would never lie. Never mind the evidence, never mind the memories I have in my own head. Let's just go ahead and erase all of those. I now need to persist with this narrative of this rape accusation and take it to my grave, because otherwise I would have done something wrong, and I never do anything. So I kind of appreciate Sharon Taylor for actually walking it back, for making the effort to retract those statements. Maybe her hands were tired and she had no choice but to retract it. But still, that wouldn't stop many other women. Against all odds, they will plow ahead with the lie, because in their own heads, it's easier than admitting they were wrong, let alone deliberately lying. Like I said, I would think most false rape allegations are made by women who lied in the heat of the moment, but have such a high opinion of themselves that they can never admit they lied, not even to themselves. So they play the do or die card, and it usually works out for them. And it's a hell of a tightrope regarding what the legal system should do with false accusers. As Angry Harry used to say, God bless his soul, when false rape accusers are punished to at least the partial extent of the law, as Sharon Taylor was, that disincentivizes women from ever coming clean. It's in their interest to keep the lie going forever. But if you don't punish women for false rape accusations, then they'll just make them. They'll just instinctively blurt them out like a sneeze, and they'll feel no remorse even when they get caught. You're not damned if you do, and you're not damned if you don't. The only solution appears to be, hey, ladies, don't falsely accuse men of rape. Do you think you can do that for us? Since no one else is going to hold you accountable, it's up to you and you alone to hold yourselves accountable.
Yeah.
Give it a go. You might feel better about yourselves if you can dig down deep and be honest with yourself. Then maybe being honest with other people will become second nature. You one step at a time, eh? We're not asking for the world. Just be yourself. Unless yourself is someone who lies just to fuck men over, in which case be someone else. Someone who's not a fucking head case. I don't know, all the best.
Well, it does sort of bring to the surface the fact that, when somebody is willing to confess to a crime and admit that they did it because they have something wrong with them, like she admitted that she had a breakdown. She admitted that she lost her shit, and she did this, and she was ashamed of it, and that she felt that it was out of her character. And a person that does this, man or woman, whether they've committed a violent crime, a non-violent crime, if they've done something stupid, I think it's a good idea for the legal system to see that person as closer to being capable of rehabilitation than someone who just keeps lying and I didn't do it, or it should have been okay that I did it, which is also an argument that people make in court when they've broken the law. I have an excuse why I did it, and it should be okay. And sometimes there are extenuating circumstances for other things. I don't think there's really much that could happen in terms of extenuating circumstances for a rape charge. You'd have to have a bunch of other women come along and brainwash you, or you'd have to be in a circumstance where you were unconscious and you thought something happened and somebody else said, "Oh yes, I saw that guy coming out of your room." And it turns out they lied to you. Like something really weird, like convoluted like that would have to happen to be an extenuating circumstance for a false rape allegation. But when somebody comes forward after a crime and says, "Man, I really fucked up and there's something wrong with me and I need help," the state's first response then should be to give them a chance to prove that if they get help, they will rehabilitate and they will be better. But they should also have to do something, like in other crimes, you have community service, you have restitution to pay to the victim of your crime, things like that. And that's part of how you prove you're rehabilitated, that you feel culpable for the crime that you committed, that you have compassion for the person that you committed it against, and you feel guilt over the damage you did to that person and over the inconvenience that you inflicted on the state. And that should accompany something like this as well. The fact that they did anything at all is remarkable, and it's good that they did something, and it's even better that it was targeted toward rehabilitation given the circumstances. But and again, you can hold that up against, well, if you keep lying and we know that you made a false allegation and you refuse to admit it, and you just push the issue and try to continue to play victim and stuff like that, that should result in incredibly harsh punishment, right? To get women who do this, and it is pretty much a uniquely female crime when it comes to sexual violence. You don't see men thinking they can get away with this, right? But to get them to realize that it's going to be better for them if they come forward and they admit they did wrong and they try at least to be rehabilitated. And then, of course, they would have to cooperate with that rehabilitation, and we do this with sex crime perpetrators where there is rehabilitation available for them. We could maybe stop putting them on a list after they've completed it, like the rehabilitation doesn't do anything. But I think the same process could easily be applied to false accusers, because pathological lying is a thing.
Yeah. Absolutely. All right. Does anyone else have any thoughts on this story or any of the other things that we talked about? Well, we're doing good on time. So we're going to head into the patron-only show now. We're going to look at this article from 1828.org.uk. I don't know what 1828 means. Where they say International Men's Day is a feminist cause by Sophia Warringer. And yeah, we'll see what it is that she has to say regarding that. I don't know if she's going to make an argument that, oh, you guys should just be feminists because we care about International Men's Day now. We'll find out. Yeah, totally. So anyway, we'll see. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe I assume too much about the people who wrote this article. Maybe they're going to be too super based. It's possible, but not likely. All right, so that's what we're going to be doing in the patron-only show. If you guys want to join us, you have to go and become a badger yourself by going to feedthebadger.com and setting up a monthly subscription. $5 a month will get you into the Discord, where you'll be able to participate in all of the additional activities. And we are planning on adding more things to the activities. I don't want to give anything away right now, but we got stuff brewing that is intended to make memberships like more appealing. So, please consider that if you want to join us and become a patron. All right, so I did get some super chow here. Michael Emmerich Winberg gives us $5 and says, in non-Muslim countries, the worth of a woman is worth the word of 2 or more men. Just kidding. In Muslim countries too, as long as the woman's accusing a man of defiling her questionable purity, same exact thing, down to the mob lynchings. Well, I think that even in the cases where that's true, where, if a Muslim allegation from a woman needs the support of another woman, I think it's because of how serious the punishment is going to be for the man. And so they don't want this kind of thing to be like too easy to do. Now, that doesn't mean that Muslim women can't still falsely accuse a guy, because all she has to do is get her friend, to essentially agree to the same thing.
Or 4 members of her family.
Yeah, or get a number, get some people from the family. What were you going to say, Mike?
I've often thought of how far back in history can we trace this? At what point did this gynocentrism thing start? And I often think, well, maybe it was the Abrahamic monotheistic religions. But then I think of India, which has been has just had a polytheistic religion that far predates any monotheism. And you've seen what they have in India. They have the dowry bullshit, which puts us to shame. And they have similar things in China. They introduced the one-child policy, and people were drowning baby girls because they need boys to look after them. And it seems to be going on all over the world. I don't think it's even religion. I think it's the more people you gather together in the same civilization under the same rubric, if you haven't recognized what gynocentrism is, then your civilization is going to go gynocentric. So it's been this way since it's not just Jesus. It's not even Moses. It's not even fucking Krishna. It's all civilization.
Yeah.
Which is why so many of us are so fucking black-pilled, because it's so difficult to create a civilization that isn't gynocentric.
Yeah. It's built into... It's our DNA, almost. Okay. Not that we can't escape it, but that we really need to be aware of it, and then that needs to be like a focus. So, yeah, thank you, Michael Emmerich Winberg. And then The Great Indoors gives us $10 and says, during Hannah's last show, Punmaster Wallen totally missed that a super chat regarding her parents and their negatives was actually a pun about photography, reflecting on Hannah's story, digging up old family pictures. I don't think the person was trying to scold you, Hannah. He's referring to himself because he's always...
Yeah, I know, but I remember that because I was all worried about them thinking that I was talking about my parents being very strict, because they were, compared to a lot of other kids' parents. Not that I think that's a bad thing, but yeah, so that's the way I took it.
All right. Well, thank you, Great Indoors. And then I do have a Rumble rant from NovaFan21, who gives us $1 and says, I prefer Nut Normally November. Also, I'd love to hear the feminist response to a training program that includes telling girls not to hit boys in anger. I don't really care what feminists would say, but I do think that there needs to be, like, some kind of PSAs maybe that involve like good behavior from children towards other children, and it should not be gendered. And
the cure for this is having fathers at home. Not because
absolutely.
That just automatically keeps girls from hitting, but because hitting in adulthood, and hitting in anger in adulthood is an outcropping of a failure to develop the skills that an adult should have at handling conflict, right? Nonviolent conflict resolution is an adult skill, and attempts at using violence first or primarily to resolve conflict is a characteristic of childhood that you grow out of, unless you don't grow up with an accountable adult who teaches you that. And I think a lot of times that accountability comes from the dad, because women don't have the same, we're not held to the same standard. We don't have the same consequences for violence, engaging in violence, that boys, like when we grew up as girls, the consequences we face are dramatically lower for engaging in violent behavior than what boys face. So by the time we're adult women, we haven't had the lessons that adult men have, unless we have dad around, you know, saying, hey, that's asshole behavior. Don't do that. And here's why. Here's what the other person is thinking. Here's what you're losing by doing that. And so it is important. And the only thing that would even come close, and it's not really close in terms of like, you know, neck and neck close. It's like the next nearest thing that is light years away would be if they taught the type of conflict resolution skills in school that they teach management in retail environments. Because you learn some self-control and conflict management there too. But you couldn't replace fathers with that. You might reduce violence with it, but you couldn't replace fathers with it.
All right. Yeah. Very good points made. So we're going to close it out here. Take a look at this article. And hopefully we'll see some new faces there. So if you guys like this video, please hit like, subscribe if you're not already subscribed to the channel. Hit the bell for notifications so you know when our streams go live. Leave us a comment. Let us know what you guys think about what we talked about on the show today. And if you could, please share this video, because sharing is caring. Thank you guys so much for coming on today's episode of HBR News, and we will talk to you all in the next video.
Men's rights activists are machines, dude. Okay? They are literal machines. They are talking point machines. They are impossible to fucking deal with, especially if you have like a couple dudes who have good memory on top of that too. Holy shit, you're fucked.